Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Serving It Up. Jim Hayes, along with a full cast today. I think it's the best cast in the podcast industry. With us today, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and Matt Holliday. And guys, we have some catching up to do because I don't know what Lance is doing, but a lot has happened since our last episode, including Kyle's return and Lance ducking out of last week's episode to do his wife's podcast and hunt turkeys. Where should we start? I'll leave it up to the dais.
I didn't get a turkey if that's what you're asking, but there's always this week.
Well, let's try. Well, let's start with Lance because it seemed like you had connection problems.
Now I have phone doesn't want to
and
stay
then a
on
video.
the stand. There we go.
And a video emerged of you apparently at the same time leaving your post to look at some turkeys outside. This is what the speculation is amongst the podcast media.
Oh, when I left?
Yeah.
There was the Wi-Fi or lack thereof any internet or 5G was just not there. There's really no other way to say it. So we went and then we did go back out, but we didn't have any luck. They kept jumping property lines on us, which you don't trespass. That's one of my things. So I made sure I didn't trespass or anything like that. So I stayed within the guidelines of all turkey rules.
That's one of your things. You're a big trespass guy. That's
I'm
where
a
you
big
draw the line on.
I do not trespass. That's my number. That's my number one pet peeve. Besides, the guy that goes too slow in the fast lane and there's no one around you, get over in the slow lane. Those two.
And trespassing. I didn't see that coming. All right.
I don't fuck with either one.
Yeah. So we wouldn't shoot a turkey and then like tiptoe over to the guy's land and just drag it over.
Back over. Yeah. No, won't do it. Deer, turkey, nothing.
Good to know. If I ever have land next to you, I feel comfortable that you won't trespass.
You're only as good as your word, and your word is you don't trespass.
Good.
What if you found someone trespassing on your compound? You have a massive compound in Illinois, right? No, Missouri, and
no. Illinois. I'm Illinois. He's Missouri.
Yeah, that's right.
Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois. We got them covered.
All right, and someone wanders onto your property to do some hunting. How do you handle that?
I politely ask them to leave with force.
So you're anti-trespassing just as much as you're not willing to trespass.
It all runs.
Yeah,
like same, but same.
Nice.
Who's got the biggest compound out of you three?
Not me.
No.
Kyle keeps adding. Kyle keeps buying out his neighbors.
I would like to, but
I'm trying to buy out some neighbors too. I don't know how much Matt has.
I like 145 acres. I'm not I'm kind of in town somewhat. I can't stretch out quite like I think maybe you guys can.
I can probably stretch. I probably have the most and can stretch the most. Be the easiest to say.
And Matt has been to my estate.
Yeah, you don't have much.
It's a postage stamp. It's a house built on postage.
You actually sued your neighbor because he built a house on your house.
That's true.
That's true. I mean, I could see that being a problem. Like,
I mean, for like regional network stuff, you're doing great.
He does live in Frontenac, which Ladue is Ladue or Frontenac? I mean, I know that people in St. Louis care about that kind of thing.
It's the Frontenac area, but we live in the ghetto of it. And Kyle, just so you know, I'm neighbors with the house that Jim Edmonds currently has up for sale for I think $9 million. And I used to be neighbors with Matt Holliday, though he'd never admit it, because I could literally jog to his house.
Which is pretty close, as you guys know. Jim doesn't jog very far.
Oh my gosh.
Not a jogger.
But I will say, if there's legal ways, like if someone trespasses and you want to ask them to leave with force, that's one way. The other way, when they encroach on your property with building extension, there's always litigation.
Run for office, right? Isn't that what you did? You ran for office. You somehow got elected. Is that correct?
So, Kyle, I sued the neighbor who was on this board, and ignored all the zoning rules. I could talk about it
Of
now
course.
because it happened years ago. And
Okay.
I asked the mayor for some help before it got too far along in the project because it was obvious that there were violations. And the mayor told me they did it by the book, and if I sued, I would face financial ruin. So not only did I sue them, but I ran for that woman's seat on the board and won,
Ah,
and then won the litigation. And they had to tear down the house.
so, they tore down the house. So they are not neighbors, and you are not friends with the mayor anymore.
No, and the mayor doesn't like me. The other folks moved away, and then new houses went up that fit the guidelines.
Yeah.
And the community is once again harmonious,
Thriving.
and everyone gets along. That's the way it should be.
That's how it goes.
Now, Lance,
good neighbors are important.
yeah, and we all get along now. We had a little problem. Lance is having an issue with his phone. So I'm going to turn to Kyle Gibson. So Lance apparently didn't intentionally duck out on the program last week. He had connection issues, but you did make your return to Major League Baseball, and I'm going to applaud you for that because
thank you.
that is not an easy thing to do. You had some rehab.
Very pro, Lance.
You had some rehab outings at the minor league level to get you ready to face the New York Yankees. Now, some would look at this and say, "Hey, that's probably not the best position to be put in for a guy who hasn't pitched in the major leagues in quite some time." But tell me your take on it.
Honestly, that thought never really crossed my mind who I was facing. I was just excited to be back out there, and the work that you put in to, feel good and be ready and build up and be ready for that spot, kind of pushes who you're facing out the window. I like challenges. I like, pitching against anybody, and unfortunately it didn't go my way. Sometimes you get hit and sometimes you get them out. So, I did already think of somewhat of the irony here as I'm joining the Serving It Up podcast as I gave up 5 homers on 5 different pitches. So it was kind of a weird day. I've already looked back at some video and tried to just look and see what was there, and a couple of them weren't located very well. A couple of them were very patient hitters that jumped on the first pitch that I don't know that I expected. And, trying to throw pitches in the strike zone and get ahead. Because in the past, when I faced the Yankees, they're a lineup that if you're working from behind, they're a really tough lineup to face. And you've got to be 0-1, 1-2 in those counts if you want to have success. And those first, 4 out of the first 5 hitters didn't even let me get to those counts. So, sometimes that works out for an offense and they put up runs early. And sometimes, as everybody's seen, you can be through the first inning in 7 or 8 pitches and first 3 innings in 25 pitches if an offense goes out there and swings really early in the count. So unfortunately for me, it did not work out in my favor, but it was always good to be back out there.
Tell me how this feels, because it's kind of like starting fresh and you're out there against a stacked lineup and balls are flying out of the ballpark. Does it feel like you're...
Keep pointing it out, Jim.
Yeah. Anything else?
Hold on.
Feels like a kick in the dick, Jim. Anything else?
I think I'm about to have some connection issues here coming up.
Listen, I'll get to the question again, but let me restate. It's not an ideal position to be in.
Sure.
So I think the main thing is you got back, and I was going to circle back to that in a minute.
After it kicked you again.
What I'm saying is, does it feel like you're kind of on an island there where you're realizing you're trying to figure things out on the fly, and it's been a while? And I think that's a fair, Matt.
Sure.
Isn't that a fair question? Matt, that's a fair question.
Yeah, that's a.
It took you a while.
I mean, I think after the first one, anybody who's given up a first batter of the game homer, you're like, oh man, all right, well that's how tonight's going to start. You're like, okay, that's how it goes, right? And then when Judge goes on the very next pitch, you're like, all right, that's not the start, right? And I think, I have given up 4 homers in a row in the first inning to the Cardinals in 2022 in Philly. And I'm 12 pitches in getting booed by the home fans. And that's not ideal. So, I think as it's happening, the only thing that was the positive to me was that it happened in very little pitches. I mean, I wasn't working hard to get to this. So, I looked up after the third inning, and they'd gotten one more run in the second, but I was at like 40 something pitches, and I felt like if I have a good fourth inning, I can look up here and get through 5 innings and feel like, man, 5 innings and 6 runs after all 5 or 5 of them in the first inning. Like, okay, the bullpen might feel like they don't have to do as much work. So honestly, to me, that's always the silver lining after runs early, is if they're quick and you can get through 5 or 6 innings still, and somehow salvage at least some length out of the start and not make those bullpen guys work so hard. That's kind of the positive. And I was in that spot and just had a couple 2-out walks there in the fourth inning and kind of ran out of gas. But yeah, I mean, in the moment, I went to secondary stuff way sooner than I normally would. I went to other things, trying to recreate basically a new game plan kind of on the fly. Because, in my mind, it was not, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of first pitch curveballs in the first inning, to get ahead, to protect against ambushes. So, we adjusted in the middle 2 innings, and I felt a lot better there in the second and third.
See, here's where I circle back, though. It's a process. You hadn't pitched in a big league game in a long time. Isn't it a process, or do I have that wrong?
No, it is. I mean, I think, the whole process of the preparation for the start, going through your report, making sure you and the catcher are on the same page, yeah, I mean, I think even being in a game again, getting that adrenaline, feeling that rush, it was a big night. Well, we were going for a series win. There was a lot of fans there. It was an awesome night at the park. Feeling that energy again, also has its adjustments to make. And, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a part of the process. You don't have to give up homers to enjoy the process, that's for sure. But getting back in it and getting back in the flow of that first one is definitely, there's going to be some bumps in the road.
Lance, if you were in his position, roles were reversed, and your first start was with the Yankees, would you suddenly come up with a shoulder impingement, or would you just go do it?
That is probably the dumbest question I've ever been asked.
That's what
I mean, that can't be. You've talked to Jim a lot of times. I mean, that can't be the dumbest.
Like, well, you know what? It's not the dumbest, but it's like the fact that he knows me and that's the most obvious.
Insulting, maybe the most insulting questions you've ever got.
It's like everyone knows that answer, Jim. It's no, you want the ball against the best teams, or why play the damn game? Like, no, that's the truth.
Yeah.
No, what do you mean? No.
In that situation, it's tough in that.
It's like, so you would rather play a 12-year-old kid at recess in basketball game than a grown man, Jim? Grow up. No, you go get the best and do it. Like, that's why you play the game. That's why we're major leaguers, because we want to beat the best. Sometimes it doesn't go your way.
Maybe that's where you fell short, Jim. Maybe that's where you fell short.
No,
mindset. You were talented. You just had a bad mindset.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you, Lance, because
you're bottom feeder, Jim. I see it.
I think you should try to get up to FM radio, but no, you want to stay at AM radio. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you got to challenge yourself with the best radio.
Some people like to be comfy. They like to be the best of the worst.
Lance, Matt, have you ever been in a situation where you came back from injury and you weren't fully locked in, but knew it would be a process that you had to battle through?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has felt less than 100% and felt like that, you were against, the odds were a little bit stacked against you. But I like Lance said, like, you want to be out there for your teammates. Like, you can't, you just, it's the competitive part of it. It's like, I can get out there and do something to help the team. And so I think that's the nature of athletes that make it to the highest level, is there's a inner competitor inside of you that says, I can get out there and still compete, even if I don't feel like I'm 100%.
I think I could be on FM radio if I.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you should challenge yourself. Maybe even try digital. I don't know.
Or you can just know your place, and you're kind of right where you belong too. So you just never know.
What regional cable journalism? That's my lane.
Hey, but you're right on the edges of the good area to live in, so you're doing your thing.
I'm in the ghetto of
You are in Frontenac. Sorry about it.
I live in a fine home. You've been here. It's just not a mansion like you gentlemen with hundreds of acres of land that I can call my own. So,
I love how he
Kyle,
wants to let everyone know that you came to his house. He really wants to let people know. Like, man, we are friends. He visited my house.
you know what? People have brought that up. That I bring that up a lot
That's your card. Some people have to play their cards. You're doing it. I see it.
only because people think, boy, Holliday gives you a hard time. I go, it's been this way since I've known him. Since the first time we were in the clubhouse together.
Yeah, since our
That's all.
first days as neighbors. Got it.
Yeah, I used to come over to the house, neighbors.
Breakfast. Hey, let's go for our morning walk.
I never went to his house. I think I drove by it once to see how close, so I could tell people we were actually neighbors. So back to Kyle now, who is the nicest person on this panel.
Just give him some time. Give him some time.
Everybody all knows that.
Keep kicking him. Keep kicking him in the doors. Keep kicking him in the balls, Jim. I'm sure it'll
Hey, back to
Kyle. Let's talk more about those homers you gave up. Yeah. Why don't we revisit your first innings?
Let me give you a couple more jabs and then ask you a real question.
Kyle, whatever happened in your return to the majors in the rearview mirror, we get it. So are you back?
You're bringing it up again.
No, I want to ask him about now. From there forward, it's just a normal start. The next one and the one after that, correct? Because let's be honest, he never reached, like a ton of pitches in the minors and everything. I'm asking him, are you on a regular schedule now? Everything's back to where it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think my last start was in the minors was 80 pitches. I think I got, maybe just short of that the other day. So, I guess there could be in their mind just, hey, if he gets to 90, let's monitor where he's at. But, they told me, hey, these first couple were, if we come and check in on you and see how you're feeling, it's not that we're worried about how you look or anything like that. We just want to make sure you're, feeling good still with the sore back and how that all transpired and everything. I said, yeah, you come talk to me. I'll let you know how I feel, whether it's good, bad. And I've never really felt like it makes a whole lot of sense to tell somebody you feel good when you don't feel good, because then you need them to believe you at some point. So, but this next start, be good to go for almost a full normal workload. So,
can I ask you a question, Jim?
Yes, of course you can.
So I'm interested. So Kyle, you have a lot of pitches. Like some pitchers have their own PitchCom on their belt or whatever, and I know that has a lot to do with like your familiarity with the catcher maybe or whatever. And I know you and Adley have obviously been together. Is there like for you coming back and knowing yourself and your pitches, is there a temptation to want to have the ability to call your own game, or do you just stand out there and shake? Like how does that work? I know some guys have it and they call their own game and some don't.
So I have it on my glove, mainly because if I didn't have the pitch clock, I wouldn't care shaking, and Adley doesn't care, if I have a pitch to shake to. But on top of the first inning, on top of it being my first start back, my PitchCom button pusher was not working hardly at all. So that just added to the frustration. It fell off my glove in the first inning, and then I put it in my back pocket. I needed to hit a button on one of the hitters, and when I would push a button, I couldn't hear it, but Adley could hear it. So, I mean, I called a pitch on it at one point with 2 seconds. I threw it on the ground and threw my pitch. It was a frustrating night with that. But the 3-2 ground ball, the time I got Judge out, Adley pushed a pitch and I pushed a pitch at the same time. I heard cutter, so I threw cutter. I don't know that Adley thought a cutter was coming. I didn't plan on throwing Aaron Judge many cutters at all that night, but that's the last thing I heard. So, and then on one of the strikeouts, I guess I had pushed a button. I didn't hear it. Adley heard me push slider. I heard Adley push changeup, and that's the one that went to the backstop because he thought it was going to go down and into the lefty. I threw a changeup that went down and away to a lefty. Thankfully, it hit the bricks and came back. But, I mean, it's, PitchCom is a good thing, I think, for, simplifying those things. I still prefer doing signs. Probably I still like to see, the fingers go down. It probably makes it a little bit easier finding the button. Sometimes finding the location is harder on the PitchCom. But to your original question about calling my own game, I like how Adley calls a game, and he knows me pretty well. And I don't. I almost like to. I put the pitch in my glove that I want to throw right, and then I like it when Adley has that confirmation on what he wants to throw, and it's one of those two pitches that I have in mind. So I kind of like that to be able to have that confirmation a little bit of what I'm thinking.
Lance, did you like PitchCom?
Loved it. I caught every pitch I threw last year.
Well, I mean, it's one button. I mean, he has one pitch. Like he just throws a fastball.
It's like one, and then it's gonna go left or right or up.
Yeah,
Like that's it. Just simple. It's just it's like, hey, fastball away and up, and then it's like it's gonna cut sinker right.
Yeah.
When did you start calling every pitch on your own as a major?
I will tell you, like, the first year of PitchCom, I got traded and all that. So you start bouncing around catchers and stuff. And then like I was like, all right, and then after then and like got the hang of it, I think it was like, all right, cool. I liked the flow of fingers and stuff like that, and I didn't have it. It was like I was always like waiting to hear something, and I felt like I was like I couldn't get in a rhythm. So I started doing it in spring training last year full time, and was like, all right, I'm going to do my own thing. And then I would push a button so the catcher could hear it, whether it's cancel or something like that. You could do that, and that kind of gives the catcher an idea. Be like, hey, throw me an option out here real quick too. So it's like our way of knowing stuff too. So we had a little back and forth, and like I could throw a pitch, and I was calling the next pitch before I even got the ball back in my glove, and then I could go. So I hated sitting there like waiting for them to push a button, this or that. So that's why I like doing it. It just gave me a better flow and stuff like that, where I could do my thing.
How important, Kyle? It seems rhythm would be the most important thing for a starting pitcher. Like if between the pitch clock and then PitchCom not working, it would seem like that would be an obstacle that would be hard to overcome.
Yeah, a rhythm is, I think it's really important for a pitcher, and that's why I think when you didn't have a limit on timeouts, you'd have offenses that would try and slow the pitcher down. You'd have, you never wanted, say Mark Burley. You never wanted Mark Burley to just be able to get the ball and jump back up there and keep going, because he'll get through 7-8 innings and it'll be an hour and a half and you lose 5-1. So
yeah, dinner reservation safe. I love that.
That's right. So I mean, I think rhythm is still important now, especially with the pitch clock, because like Lance said, I like that catchers, when they think and are prepared and don't just throw a button or push a button just to push one. But if you start, for me, like Matt said, with 6 pitches, if you start at 9 seconds on the clock, there's a chance that I'm not getting that pitch until 2 or 3 seconds, and now you feel rushed and you feel like you got to go, and so that can be a little difficult. So definitely you want to try to get that pitch early so that I can sit there and think about it and know what I'm trying to do with it.
Matt,
I will second this real quick with the PitchCom thing. I like it in the sense, if you push your own buttons, you got nobody else to blame either. So there's guys out there like, oh, well, he called this and that. That's horseshit. You got the ability to call your own stuff. So if you're going to blame other people, man up and get a pitch calm on your belt and push your own stuff. So you'll have that back and forth a little bit. So for me, there's nothing better than pushing heater in and saying, oh, fuck yeah, I'm throwing a heater in. So that's like, come and get it. Here we go. So like there's a back and forth there, but I like there's a control factor, but there's also, hey, it's your game. So you have the ability to call it. So no one should ever say, oh, well, pitch selection was this and that, or, just whatever today. It's like, no, you got the ability to do it. So there's no out anymore for anybody.
Matt, did you ever try to mess with a pitcher's timing? Is that something? I know some guys try to get under the skin of an opposing pitcher. It doesn't seem to really be your MO, but were there times you were like, I'm going to try to make this guy get out of his rhythm a little bit?
I mean, I think outside of like what Kyle said, guys like Mark Burley or some of these guys, that it's they're intentionally trying to get, rapid pitches and trying to keep you maybe even starting before you're ready. And this is before the rules now, where you have to, like, engage with the pitcher on your eyes, and they have to wait for you to look up. And, it's so much more governed now since I've stopped playing. So, but there was guys, like he said, Mark Burley and some of these guys that wanted to work fast. They wanted to kind of catch you off guard, or they wanted to, kind of speed you up. That you would step out, or you'd have guys that are quick pitching that, you put your foot in the box and they're coming, and you tell the umpire, like, look, you got to give me a second to at least get my other foot in the box. So I'd say it was such a rare thing that I probably can't even name one time that it happened, but there was pitchers, that would try to mess with your timing. So you try to make sure that we only have 4 bats a game. So you want to make sure you don't give one away, because the guy's speeding you up. But, for the most part, it really wasn't an issue.
All right, this could be a bad question, but we've already established
Highly likely.
sort of
Highly
my
likely.
lane. But I just think rhythm is so important for pitching, for hitting, and just for the players. And I think sometimes, like the out of the blue day game in the middle of the week messes up the rhythm of, players who are adjusting to a heavy part of the schedule. Do day games
Wow.
mess up? Do
What are
day
you-
games
Jeez.
mess up rhythm at all?
I think for a starting pitcher, I think it is probably the least, maybe. I think for me, it's probably the least disruptor, because normally if you have a night game before a day game, I'm going home in the 5th inning. Lance is going home in the 2nd. And we're
I might not even make it to
second.
the
I was going to
first.
say he left after he played catch.
I was trying to give
See
you a
y'all
little bit of
tomorrow.
benefit,
I promise I'll watch.
I'm going home early. I'm trying to get dinner on a decent time and get some rest. I'm probably the most rested player on the field. So, I mean, position players, that's probably a lot bigger adjustment, because you're getting done at 10. You're trying to get some sleep, and you're back up at 9 and back in the cage by 10 for that 1 o'clock game.
Yeah, I would
got
say
a family
that.
too.
I would say that it kind of depends. Like, if the game the night before ended at a reasonable time, and the bus was at 10 the next morning, and the weather was warm and sunny. I mean, I like day games, but I think that my problem came when Wayno would leave the night before, in the 2nd inning on the road, and I'd get back to the room, and we'd have adjoining rooms, and he'd be laying on the couch watching TV, not asleep, not preparing, and I would say, "Why did you leave again? Why did you left so that you could go home, and it's 1 o'clock and you're still watching Breaking Bad?" Like.
Yeah. Or getting back
that
from
was
dinner when the bus lands.
Yeah,
when the bus
that was
gets in.
the problem. Was hey, you left early so you could get a good night's rest, and here you are, playing Coolio on your guitar. It's just one of those things where these starting pitchers sometimes, we're grinding it out, and he's been eating dessert, watching, not even watching the game.
Yep. I would say that's the one thing I learned from Wayno is if you leave early, make sure you get done with dinner and back to your room before the bus gets back.
Pretend like you're.
It's just a bad look. That did happen. Hey, Wayno, how long you been gone? Just get back from dinner. Thought you were getting to sleep early nights at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't pitchers relax before a start in different ways? You don't have to sleep. Maybe you're wound up.
Maybe you could just relax on the bench and cheer for the boys. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you can just
If I was on the road, I'd never leave. If I was at home and family was there, that was my time to leave. Because if you're on the road, you're gonna get back and you're up till midnight anyway. So there's really no stopping it. It's tough, but when you're at home, you can get home, you're in your own bed, and it's a little different. But I will say it is a terrible look when you're getting back from dinner that you left the game to go eat when the bus is coming back. So I'll just leave it at that.
You guys are all family men, and I sometimes, like, the friends of mine or a fan I would explain this to. Yes, you guys have enriched yourself beyond the average person's wildest dreams with huge estates, much better than mine, even though mine
is
used to be close to Matt Holliday's. But you guys also you have kids, you have wives, and the schedule of a major leaguer is tough. How much of a challenges at balancing family. Sometimes they come with you on the road. Maybe one of the kids is sick. How much of a challenge? We'll start with you, Kyle, and then we'll go around the circle.
Oh man, I think if we have this question once a year, not just asked to us, but we ask each other, how do some couples do it better than us? Because we feel like there's got to be couples that do it better than us, or maybe they look like they do it better than us, and they just haven't told us that they struggle with it. But I mean, it's tough. I think we have 4 kids, and yeah, I mean, when you're on the road, or right now, I'm in our home city, and Elizabeth is a single mom with some help, back in the St. Louis area. So it's definitely tough, because there's tough days at home that you want to listen and you want to make sure that you're quote there for, but there's just no way to be there whenever you're not there. So yeah, I mean, it's trying to be intentional with the time that you get. I'm somebody that spends more time on planes to get home for off days, to make sure that I'm trying to be there for 24, 48 hours. And, trying to make sure that as a starting pitcher, I can do that a little bit more. I can pick my times here, and be a little intentional about that. But I think that's probably the biggest part, is when you are there, and when the kids are in the city and Elizabeth is in the city with us, trying to be as present as possible, and trying to make sure that I'm, still trying to do everything that I need to do as a dad and a husband.
How about you, Lance?
Yeah, I think that's something the older you get, the more you learn to be able to deal with it. The number one thing is, like Kyle said, wives are amazing. The things that they have to deal with when you have kids and stuff like that. So shout out to all the baseball wives with kids out there and stuff that they have to deal with, because it is you're a single parent. I mean, you got to think, half the time you're, like Kyle said, half the time you're on the road, and then the other half you're not living at home. You're in your, Kyle and I got to live at home last year. I know Matt lived in St. Louis when he played there, so you have that ability in some places, but most people don't live in the cities they play in, so you're always in someone else's home, a hotel, or something like that. Your kids are always not in their bed on their routine, so it's craziness at all times. And then, like I said, when you get older, you figure things out. Like, there's a lot of times where on off days, and if we had a day game going into an off day to a new city or something like that, you go home. You make sure you get yourself home. So there's a lot of different things the older you get in the game. When you're young and don't have any kids and you're married, take your wife with you to the next city and enjoy it, for as long as you can. Because when you start having kids, they don't get to travel as much, and if they do, it's got a little different look to it. And then when when you do have kids, try to make them, especially when they're young, get them in every city you can, and let them enjoy it. So it's definitely a different thing. But when school starts, it's a totally different ball game too. So you just kind of got to feel the flow of it and try to make the best of it you can. And wives have to do a lot of that work.
Also, shout out to the sideline reporter wives out there who's stuck in
she's
crummy,
been
crummy
kidding
houses.
you for years. That's a
Jeez. Talk about over your skis.
What about you, Matt?
I think it's one of those things where you have to figure out what works for your family, and everybody's different. I think for me and us, Leslie was incredible at making sure, especially on like a 10-day road trip, that she would bring the kids and they would come to at least one leg of the trip. So we had some guidelines that we tried to stick to, or we weren't apart more than 7 or 8 days. And that was more for our marriage and our relationship. And then obviously she knew that being a dad was very important to me. So she would sacrifice a lot to make sure that she could come on the road some. And then we lived wherever I played, we lived in the city for the season. Even when the kids got old enough for school, we figured out some ways to get them schooling, virtually. Now is probably, we were kind of doing it virtually before, COVID, and now it's very popular that a lot of people have virtual options. So, we probably sacrificed some of the education for the 2 older boys. I think Jackson still counts on his fingers, but that's fine. Totally. But I think for us, the most important thing for us was to be together. and there was sacrifice on both ends. And like Kyle said, there's days where you try to fly home, or you try to make sure that it might look like a little bit of a sacrifice, but it was worth it. And she sacrificed way more than I did with traveling with small kids and making it work, and flying, commercial. You got layovers with little ones. It's a it can be a miserable deal, but that was the priority for us when I played, and it allowed me to play longer. I think if she'd have been very sort of, I'm not doing that, and we're going to live in this certain place, and we're not going to be flexible, I probably wouldn't have played as long, because like I said, being a husband and a dad was something that I really wanted to be good at and take pride in, and felt like that was the biggest calling on my life, was to be a good husband and a father that was guiding my kids in a way that with biblical principles, and being a man. And so that was always important to me. And so, like I said, she sacrificed the most, and it worked really well for us. And not that we had it all figured out, and it wasn't difficult at times, but I think in general, that strategy, I think it helped us too with retirement and stop playing, where sometimes guys that you have these gaps where you don't see your wife for a long time, or your wife's living at your home base, and there can be an adjustment to being back in the family's life every day, to where you've been gone for so long, seemingly at least half the time. And then, like they said, when you're home, you're not really home, because you go to the field at 1:30 and you come home at 11 o'clock at night, and it can be very challenging. So there's a lot of ways to, I think, stay connected, but that was the way we did it.
And also, I mean, a sacrifice on your guys' part, because you're missing things you want to be at. Like, yes, the wives do the heavy lifting, there's no question, but there's things you guys don't get to see because you're doing your job. Now, I'm going to ask one more question about this, and we'll move on. If it ever happened to me where I had a bad report, or said something wrong on the air, I mean, it's never happened. But if I had ever had a bad day doing regional cable journalism, knock wood, that it doesn't happen. But how do you compartmentalize that, where you have a rough day at work, in your case playing, you're going through a bad streak, maybe pitching, or a hitless streak? How do you compartmentalize that and not bring that home? And we'll go around the circle again. We go with you, Kyle.
Impeccable timing, Jim, asking that question.
You going to point out the first inning again, Jim? Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, it's serving it up. It's serving it up.
After we go around the circle here, I'd like to ask a question. I just want to preface that before we move on to something else. I have a question of Matt. So how do I move on from that? Well, I think for me, it's the biggest example that I have from Tuesday. Elizabeth was there for the start. I was able to see her, and right away, sure, she cares that, how I'm doing. She cares that, maybe the start didn't go as well, but, she's only there for a day. How am I going to spend, my last 5 hours with her before she has to get on a plane? And then on top of that, my sister, my brother-in-law, my two nephews or two of my nephews and my niece are there. And I can promise you, they do not care. They care that we lost because they want us to win, but my performance on the field does not define to them who I am. And when I realize that, then I can understand, or I can enjoy that time with them. If I walk out of the locker room, and they were thankfully able to spend the day here yesterday as well. If I walk out of the locker room and the next 24 hours with them is ruined because I gave up 5 homers, well, then I'm only wasting that time with them. So I learned in college and all throughout my career that I've got to be able to leave the baseball field at the baseball field. But when I actually started allowing my kids and realizing that they don't care about that, I'm dad now, and that's how they see me. That really changed a lot for me, because my daughter, who's 11, she'll be like, oh, what happened on that pitch? Like, just innocently. But other than that, they enjoyed watching me on TV. They enjoyed watching me at the game, and they just want to talk to dad.
Lance?
Yeah, I'd say that's the learning process as you grow here. Like, your whole life, A lot of things have been based off of, the results that you've had, good or bad. So the number one thing you have to learn is not get too high or too low. Right. So leaving the thing, I tried to always, after I got done answering your absolutely garbage questions, that was when, like, you try to just shut it off. In the sense of the matter is, hey, there's baseball life and then there's like real life. And then you try to figure out, hey, how, whatever happened out there happened, and I'm going to process it because that's my job and that's what I have to do. And I'm not going to let it bleed over into not only my personal life, but my next start either. So that was kind of the way that I tried to go about it is, hey, that things happen. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to get better, good or bad start. But that doesn't matter how I treat my family, how I take care of my family or anything like that. I do that. And then the next day when I'm going to the field, I lock back into, hey, what do I got to do better? What did I do good? On to the next start. So it's like you very much so. It's like I had certain times when I was like in St. Louis, when I was leaving that door and I was about to hit where the family room was up the hallway, it was like, all right. And then you just lock into family mode. And then you go home and all that, get everybody to bed, do all your things. And then next day you come back, boom, on the drive in, 1:30. All right, lock back into that. And then it's just like, that's kind of you get in that rhythm because you have to. And then it's just that's how you do your next starts too. It's like, hey, on the road, hey, I had a bad start. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up and what do I got to do to correct all those things? Or I had a good start, but I got away with some things. How can I correct those for my next start too? Because most likely you're not going to keep getting away with things. So like that's the process that a lot of guys take, and everybody has their own way to do it. So you just got to find that.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Lance said, like you have to be process oriented in this game, and so like you said, you leave the locker room, and you have the family and your kids, and I think that Leslie did a great job of like, if I wanted to talk about it, she was willing to talk about it and listen. If I didn't want to talk about anything with baseball, it was perfectly fine. We would talk about anything else. So I think for me, a lot of times, it's you come home, you eat, you play with the kids a little bit. It's time for them to go to bed, and then maybe they go to bed, and you want to talk some things out, maybe that you're feeling, or where you feel like it's not going well, how to fix it, and you have an opportunity to maybe even talk to her about it. And then, like Lance said, like, it's okay. You got to turn the page, and then the next day it's like a challenge. Like, you go to bed, and then the challenge of the next day is upon you. So you can't live in the previous day. You have to turn the page and move on to the challenge that baseball brings. And I think that, in the major leagues, if you're not completely mentally ready every game, you can get embarrassed. Like, you get it shoved up your butt. And so that's the challenge is to mentally be able to process and get what you want out of it, and then turn the page to the next day. And how, like you said, how each guy does that could look a little bit different. But I think the ability to have the game be part of your life, but not let the emotions of it sort of dictate your mood when you're at home with your family. And that could be challenging. Look, when you're an 0 for 14 or an 0 for 20 and you haven't had a hit, and you start to feel the heaviness of not being able to help your team, that you've let the boys down, like that can carry. I mean, it's hard to shut that off when you walk up the the ramp. And I think, sure, kids give you a great perspective, and their base of love for you doesn't matter whether you went 4 for 4 or 0 for 4. But there's challenging times where you're a little bit burdened by the lack of performance. But I think that's okay to let your family know that maybe you're frustrated or down. I mean, I just think that it's how but that shouldn't come across as anger or but I think that it's okay to express for them to know, like, especially when my boys got older, and they started, wow, 0 for 14, like, you probably should get a hit soon, some of that stuff where you start to go, yeah, I know, thanks so much. So I think it's you go in stages, with your kids, but like I said, like Lance said, you have to be able to process these things, and car ride homes or car ride twos are a great place to process. A lot of times you end up with two cars, because you go in early and your wife comes in later, and so you have that 20 minutes in the car on the way home to process and to turn the page, wash it clean, and get out of the car and move on.
So
Max,
here's
about
my
20-minute
question, Jim.
drive.
The Frontenac Drive, Jim. It could be 10 minutes without traffic.
So Jim, if I may, and I said this question is for Matt, but mainly because Matt, from our experience of listening to you and Leslie speak at PAO, and be really open about your guys' marriage and how you guys did it. But Lance, as I was sitting here thinking, like, you have a lot of experience too, parenting, from afar. You have an older daughter, Mia, so like it is for both of you. But so, Matt, you talked about like biblical principles of husband and father. Like, how did you manage still being a leader of the family from afar? And maybe I'm not talking like the dictator of the family. I'm just like being that dad, right? Because who knows who's watching and listening to this. It's not just for baseball people. There's going to be people who travel for work and are on the road a lot. So like, how did you manage that being from afar, when it was just a 7 or a 10-day trip that you might not get to see, Leslie and the kids, and Lance, same thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intentionality of which you husband and parent and being, I think, present. I think it's easy to check out sometimes when you're on the road, and I think FaceTime and some of the new stuff that we have, the ability for them to feel like we're actually still there even when we're not. I remember a funny story. We were on the plane about to take off to go somewhere, and Leslie was at home, and she calls me, like, we had just started playing cards. The boys are getting the snacks, the M&Ms, the guys are starting to kind of settle into the flight, and the cards are going out, and Leslie calls me, and she's like frantic, and I'm like, oh, well, what's going on? Like, of course, you're caught off guard, and she's like, I can't remember which kid it was. I think it might have been Ethan, but she's like, you got to talk to him. He just said F, and I'm like, she's like, oh, what, you need to do something. I'm like 1,400 miles away. I'm on the plane. We're about to take off. And I'm like, I don't know what, I guess put him on the phone. I don't know. What do you want me to do? Like, yell at him? So there's times where you're asked to parent where you're like, I mean, it's not going to have the same effect. Like, I didn't hear him say it. I'm on a plane a long ways away. And, so there's definitely challenges to trying to maintain, that. But like I said, we just were very intentional about sacrificing for each other, as far as like, it's not convenient for her to fly to Milwaukee on a Wednesday with the kids because we haven't seen each other in 7 days. But we knew that in the end it would pay off, as far as them and our relationship and our marriage, for us to be together, even if it was for 3 days. And so I think that for us was just like the intentionality of sacrifice. And that really, I think, served us well. And then it actually, I think, helped us in retirement of not having to reintroduce each other to our marriage, and our kids feeling like, wow, it's weird. Dad's here all the time now, and mom's not the, sole parent. And so I definitely think the wife, she has a huge role because we can't be there all the time. But I think Leslie's willingness to make sure that they still knew that, I was dad and still very much a part of it. So that would be, I guess, sort of a short answer, and maybe what over 15 years you figure out.
I would say I'm apologizing that most likely Ethan saw me pitch that night.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it was
probably
it's
my
definitely your
fault.
fault.
It was definitely my fault. But that being said, like those are the main things, because like for me, when I play, I'm a different animal, right? So for me, like I got kids that are older and all that, like they see me scream and stuff like that. So I had to show them that probably not the best way to go about it, but that was my way to compete. And there's some things that I've said over my years that I'm not proud of, but trying to teach them things too. And the main thing for me is the FaceTime and stuff over the years. Just really make sure. And like, Kyle, I mean, I played with you on 3 different teams over the years. Like watching you was amazing. Seeing how you were always locked in and trying and doing everything you can. I got to play with Matt and I got to play with Wayno. So like I got to see how to do it too. So that was huge along the way. As I got older, as I started having kids and more kids and stuff like that. There's no perfect way to do it, but you have to find your way to do it. But I guess it's the same thing I did when in my pitching arsenal and the way I carried myself. Is I took a little bit from everybody because you got to learn things as you go, and you can't think you have it all figured out in this game on and off the field because there's things and tidbits people can help you with, and without even knowing. So, like I've learned things from both of you on how to be a better dad, a better husband, and be there as much as you can because there's things that we're all brought up differently, right? We're all raised differently, raised in different areas. Except Kyle and I were raised within like an hour of each other, but never really knew each other. So it's weird. But you always have like give different upbringings and stuff, and there's always things that you can learn, and then there's always different ways you can teach your kids things, and each kid take things differently too. So those were the things that I tried to do. The older I got, is figure out all those different things, different ways to do different things and get things across.
I'm going to ask one last question because this is a fascinating topic. If you guys could pick one guy that you played with that was a teammate, aside from the panel here, because you guys are all obviously a big part of that. But if you could pick one guy in your career that was sort of a mentor for you to show you the right way to do it, you mentioned a couple, Lance. Give me a name of someone maybe off the beaten path that showed you how to balance everything. And we'll go Kyle, and then we'll go around the horn again.
On the field, Mike Pelfrey was a guy that was huge for me, just learning how to be a professional in the locker room and on the mound and, dealing with failure and stuff like that. Man, off the field, I've been fortunate to play with a lot of people who did it right, when it came to, taking care of the family. Kurt Suzuki is one that comes to mind. Just how he was with Renee and his family. So I'd probably go with Kurt.
How about you,
Jim? That's a tough question because like I said, there's so many things you can take from different people. Like I've already mentioned a couple, but I could name 3 more right now in the sense of Chris Carpenter helped me in so many different ways. Like just learning to prepare and things like that and have that fire, but like not let it overtake me to where like I'm a bad teammate because, and then Jake Westbrook, who was like the old Georgia Bulldog on the mound when it was time, but was one of the best clubhouse, keep guys upbeat, like just like a great person to be around. And then John Lackey was amazing to me too, because it was, hey, he was there for his guys. And then, but you saw him on the mound, you're like, man, this guy's kind of a jerk. And then next thing you know, but John Lackey is one of the greatest teammates and human beings I've ever been around. But people who've never met him were like, that guy's a dick. Like, there's really no other way to say it. But my man took care of everybody. He would literally give the shirt off your back, and all those guys would. So, I mean, I was very blessed to have a lot of great people to show me a lot of different ways to do it. And they're all at fault for this beauty that turned out to be.
and Matt, outside of me, who are some of the other mentors that showed you the ropes?
Certainly, you said not on this panel, so I'll leave you out for now. So I think about, obviously there's a lot of different people that affect you on the field. I would say Mike Matheny probably, as far as like role model for a husband and father, and like somebody who had a lot of, I guess, it was just a really good husband and father, which is something I wanted to be. And, a lot of his characteristics. Now he could like whittle a bunk bed out of a piece of wood, and he would shoot his own food and like fix cars in a giant garage, and he did all these incredibly manly things that I can't do. So I had to pick and choose what I could take from him, but he was somebody that I consider like a mentor, and how he handled his personal life. And then, like they said, there's tons of guys over a long career that you pick and choose and take things from. Early in my career, Todd Green and Mark Sweeney really took me under their wing, and taught me how to be a pro, and taught me how to be a good teammate, and how to treat the younger guys, and how to help shape and help mentor younger players. But there's like Lance said, you could go on and on. I mean, you run into incredible teammates along the way that you go, man, that's really, really appealing. I want to be more like that. And so there's tons of guys, but those guys come to mind.
Well, gentlemen, this is a big show. Matt figured out how to use the link. Lance stayed with us the entire time and didn't ditch out to hunt for turkeys. And I honestly think I've learned a lot along the way. I hope the viewers did too. So thank you, gentlemen.
Wait, you're not going to say anything to Kyle? You're just going to crush Lance
He's
and
said
I?
enough. He's said enough.
Oh, that's
already.
right. You want to bring up the first inning again before we go?
Say, Kyle, keep your chin up. Jim wanted me to tell you, keep your chin up.
Hey, Kyle, let's talk about first inning.
If I'm not here next
Kyle,
week,
let's
you
hope the
guys know
next one's
why.
better.
Kyle has shown us
Just say
grace.
it, Jim, you dick.
Kyle has shown us grace and maturity, and I appreciate it. And that's going to do it for this edition of Serving It Up. We hope to see you next time. Hopefully, it won't be awful.